بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So last time we stopped at recommended things to do in Friday, and the recommended things in Fridays are things that scholars came up with through observation, and it is neither pillars of Friday nor obligations. So they thought that as long as it is something that we should do on a Friday, it can. But give me 1 second. Let me try to find something here to, well, I think it's too late to stop the chatting, but nevertheless. So what are these things? Number one, it is highly recommended for a Muslim on a day of Friday to go to the Masjid as early as possible. And the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that whoever goes in the first period or the first hour as if he had sacrificed a camel, the second hour is as if he sacrificed a cow, then a sheep, then a chicken, then an egg. And this is the last thing when the Imam comes in and the angels would fold their registration books so that anyone who comes afterwards would not be rewarded as those who came earlier, and they would sit and listen. And coming to the mosque earlier, these 5 hours, scholars have differed upon. Are they like our own hours, 60 minutes? The answer is definitely not. Because the hour in the Quran and in the Sunnah refers to a particular period of time that can be long and can be short, and usually it is referred to as something that is short. And the scholars, beginning from Salatul Duha time, and this is after the sunrise by 10 to 15 minutes. So do you mean to tell me that people used to go to attend Friday prayers at 7:30 or 8 o'clock? The answer is yes. Because this is once in a week, and this is the weekly Eid of the believers, of the Muslims, and hence going there this early would grant them a lot of reward that are beyond imagination. What kind of rewards? Well, there's an authentic hadith that blows your mind when you listen to the reward in it. The Prophet says, alayhi salatu wasalam, man ghassala wa ghatasal. And this brings us to number 2 of the things that are recommended, which is taking a bath on Friday, and we will get to talk about the ruling on that. So the Prophet says, alayhi salam, whoever takes a bath and cleanses himself well, وَبَكَّرَ وَابْتَكَرَ, and he goes out from his home real early to the Masjid, وَمَشَى وَلَمْ يَرْكَبْ, and he walked to the Masjid and did not take a ride, وَدَنَى مِنَ الْإِمَامِ وَأَنصَتْ, and he got as close as he can get to the Imam's position and paid attention. وَاسْتَمَعَ وَلَمْ يَلْغُ, and he listens to the Imam and does not distract himself or others by not talking by not touching the pebbles, by not playing around. So if any person does step he makes from his home to the masjid, he'll be rewarded for every step he makes from his home to the masjid by a year fasting and praying. What do you mean? It means that if your house is 500 steps away from the masjid, you will be given, you will be awarded 500 years of good deeds, as if you had prayed all these 500 years, night prayer, and you have fasted all these 500 years, voluntary fasting. What about if I live 300, 3,000, 10,000 steps away? You will be rewarded that. This is mind-blowing. And this is the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal upon those who are granted this blessing of going to the masjid earlier. Because the vast majority of Muslims only come a minute or two before the Imam enters the masjid. And those are the righteous practicing Muslims. The normal people would come after the first sermon, or after the second sermon, or maybe after the Imam has prayed one rak'ah. And this shows how much neglectful people are. Again, this great reward is for whomever does the things that we've mentioned earlier in the hadith. And women can justifiably ask, if this is for men, but we were ordered not to pray in the masjid, so wouldn't that be unfair for us to stay back home while all the men are getting all the great rewards? The answer is no. Because it was the Prophet himself, alayhi salatu wasalam, who said that the prayer of a woman is better for her in her home than in his masjid. Which means that as long as she anticipates the reward of praying home, that she will be rewarded as the man is rewarded in his masjid with all these steps, with all these years, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. So now, taking ghusl, is it mandatory or not? It's an issue of dispute among scholars. Some scholars say that it is mandatory. The majority of scholars say that it is highly recommended. And the reasons behind both opinions are many, and it would consume us a lot of time, but it is sufficient to know that the majority said it's not mandatory, and the justification for it was also given by Abdullah ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father, when he explained to his companions why was it mandated in the beginning. And he said that in the beginning in Medina, the immigrants were so poor, they had only one garment to wear. Now we have like 10 in our wardrobes. We have few suits here and there. We have so many t-shirts and hoodies and whatever. The companions had only one garment to wear. And whenever they had to wash it, they would isolate themselves in homes, waiting for it until it is dried so that they can put it on again. And it was mainly made of wool because it is durable, like jeans. And when they used to work in their farms and manual or labor work in order to earn some money, they used to sweat heavily. And whenever they went to the masjid early and sat waiting for the Prophet to deliver the Friday sermon, it was packed and it was hot, and they were offended. He ordered them to perform ghusl once every week. referring to Jumu'ah. And once the people, alhamdulillah, got money and they had wealth and they can afford to bathe and to change their clothes, then this obligation was uplifted. And this is why the vast majority of scholars say that it is highly recommended. Now, having said that, a Muslim, a real Muslim, should not take this easy and say to himself, yeah, okay, if it's not mandatory, I'm not going to do it. No. You should do it because the least it is, Allah loves it and the Prophet ﷺ loves it. So the least you do it for is to gain the pleasure of Allah, the Almighty. Having said that, are women also included? The answer is no. This is only for those who are attending the Friday sermon, the Friday prayer. And a question that a lot of the Muslims also ask, can we perform this ghusl at the night of Friday? Because we know that Friday begins after the sunset of Thursday. So now is Thursday here in Saudi Arabia. It's about an hour and a half, no, maybe, yeah, sort of, 2 hours minus 10 minutes for sunset. So when the sun sets after an hour and a half or so, now can I perform ghusl of Friday because now it is Friday? Is it not? The answer is yes, it is Friday, but the ghusl is disputed whether it is to be for the day of Friday or for Friday indefinitely. If we say the day of Friday, this means it begins from Fajr and it ends at the Salat itself. Because what's the point of having a bath after the prayer is over? There's no point of that. And if we say it's Friday indefinitely, then yes, after sunset you can. And the rulings differ because of the hadith. So when the Prophet said, alayhi salatu salam, offer salutation upon me as much as you can on the day and night of a Friday, this means after sunset of Thursday, you're okay to go. And he will be exempted from the torment of the grave. Then we say, okay, if a person dies after the sunset of Thursday, he's okay to go. He's included in the hadith. But when it comes to other things that mentions only the day of Friday, then such as the ghusl, such as reciting Surah Al-Kahf, in this case, it should be done after the Fajr is due on a Friday. So the textbook here says in number 3, to wear perfume and take care of one's cleanliness. We mentioned the issue of wearing, the issue of taking care of one's cleanliness in the hadith, man bakkara wa abtakar wa ghassala wa ghtasal. And this, some scholars say ghassala, meaning that he caused someone else to have a ghusl. Wa ghtasal, he himself made ghusl. So some scholars interpreted it as referring to having intimacy with the spouse on a Friday night, so that this would result in ghusl for both of them. But this is a bit far-fetched, and Allah knows best. So part of number 3 is to wear perfume. And there is a hadith. Again, this hadith is one of the evidences for the scholars who said that ghusl is mandatory. Because the hadith, and I think it's in Sahih Imam Muslim, goes like this: غسل الجمعة واجب على كل محتلم والطيب والسواك. So those who say it's mandatory, they take the first portion, which says غسل الجمعة, the ghusl of a Friday, is mandatory upon everyone who had reached the age of puberty, and they stop here. While if you continue, the hadith goes to say, and perfume and siwak. So now we have a dilemma, because no one says that during Jumu'ah it is mandatory. Wearing perfume and using the miswak is highly recommended. So why do you say that ghusl is mandatory? So what does wajib here means? Scholars differed, and they say that wajib means that it is fallen, like wajbah. And I don't want to go into details because this would take much of our time, and maybe it's not that stage of fiqh. Maybe if we go to the advanced level, inshallah, then we would go into details. Anyhow, so to wear perfume and to take care of one's cleanliness definitely is a recommended thing. Now the textbook says that clipping one's nails and removing any hair that is recommended to be removed, such as shaving the pubic hair or plucking the armpit hair or trimming one's mustache, they say that all of these things are also recommended. These things are part of the fitrah, so it's recommended without limiting it to a particular ibadah. So in the books of fiqh, sometimes you find these things mentioned when getting prepared for ihram, before wearing the ihram. Yet scholars, in their authentic opinion, said that this is not part of preparing for Jumu'ah. It is not part of preparing for ihram, simply because though these things are good to remove and to perform as characteristics of the fitrah, yet it was never directed to us by the Prophet ﷺ, and hence one should not relate it to it. So if you do it on regular basis every Friday before Friday Jumu'ah, thinking that it is part of the Jumu'ah, this is wrong. You should not do it. Do it any other day. Do it Thursday morning. Do it after the Jumu'ah, whatever you want. But if you might be something recommended, then there's no problem in that, inshallah. Number 4, it is recommended also to wear some of one's best clothes. And this is something that scholars agree upon, because the Prophet ﷺ used to have a special set of garment to wear whenever it was Eid, or he has envoys coming and dignitaries to meet him, or whenever it was for Friday. The textbook highlights a hadith of Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, that he would recommend to the Prophet ﷺ to wear a valuable garment for Friday and to receive delegations whenever they come. And also there's an authentic hadith where the Prophet said ﷺ, any one of you will do well to buy 2 garments to use on Friday instead of the 2 he wears for attending to his work. So again, this refers to the issue when the people had only one set of clothes to wear 24/7. This is the only set of clothes they had throughout the year. So the recommendation came from the Prophet ﷺ to honor a Friday by having a special set of clothes that you only wear it for the prayer. And this is something both part of the religion, and it's also part of glorifying Allah Azza wa Jal. When you wear your special clothes, for example, I know some scholars, before going to their TV programs, they wear perfume heavily. And when people ask them, why are you doing this? The cameras are high def, yes, true, but it's not high smell yet. So no one can smell it. He says, yes, but I'm honoring the material I am delivering by preparing to it my best. So this is much a person thinks of what he's doing. So if you have a set of clothes and your wife says, wear these, you have a wedding tonight. He said, no, these are for the Jumu'ah. I only wear them for the Jumu'ah, to glorify the Jumu'ah and to give it a special status. That would be something nice and worth considering. Number 5, to offer salutation upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Thursday, you say as much as possible, Allahumma salli wa sallim ala abdika wa rasulika nabiyyina Muhammad. Offering salutation upon the Prophet alayhi salatu. And we have a short version for the lazy, and we have the full version. So when you say Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammad, that's it. You get 10 folds of good deeds. And Allah Azza wa Jal mention you. Allah mentions you at the higher levels by name to the angels. The longer and the best version is Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid. وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. This is the best version to be said, but the short version for those who are lazy is also valid, and it's good. And as stated, from the sunset of Thursday till the sunset of Friday, this is the time to offer as many times as possible. Number 5, reciting the surah. Another sunnah is to recite in Fajr prayer, surah number, this is Surah 33, Surah Al-Ahzab, and you do not recite this in Surah Al-Fajr, in Fajr prayer of a Friday. You recite 32, which is Surah Al-Sajdah in the first rak'ah, and Surah 76, which is Surah Al-Insan in the second rak'ah. This is what the Prophet used to do, alayhi salatu. So this is highly recommended for the Imam to lead the prayer with every single Friday. And this is what most masjids following the Sunnah do, including Mecca and Medina Haram. But unfortunately, elsewhere, people are getting lazier and lazier. So they think that reciting these 5 pages is too long, and this is too extreme, not knowing that every single Friday the Prophet used to recite them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, part of the Sunnah, the recommended things to do on a Friday is to recite Surah Al-Kahf. And again, the time of reciting Surah Al-Kahf is from the Fajr of Friday till the sunset of Friday. So it's during the daytime, not before that. And the hadith that supports this was authenticated by Sheikh Al-Albani, Sheikh bin Baz, Sheikh bin Uthaymeen. Yet many other scholars say that it is not authentic. And this comes under the category of Fada'il al-A'mal. Therefore, if a person does it, there's no problem in that, inshallah, especially with these great Imams authenticating it. And it is unquestionable that the first 10 ayahs, and another narration, the last 10 ayahs of this surah protects the person who memorizes them from the fitna of the Dajjal. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us all. Number 7. what is known as Tahiyyatul Masjid, the greeting of the masjid. Now, this issue is an issue of dispute because some scholars say it is mandatory and you must not sit down before you pray them, and they have a hadith to back it up. Others, such as the majority of scholars, say it is recommended. And the most authentic opinion is that it is obligatory. You must not day when you enter the masjid before you pray 2 rak'ahs. What's the evidence? The evidence is the hadith of Sadiq al-Ghatafani or Sulaik al-Ghatafani. When he came while the Prophet was giving the khutbah and sat down. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, did you pray 2 rak'ahs before you sit? The Prophet interrupted the khutbah and addressed the man. And the man said, no, I did not. So the Prophet said to him, stand up and pray them. This is a clear indication that it is mandatory for the Prophet ﷺ to stop and interrupt his khutbah for something that's voluntary. That would not be logical. And the Prophet had said, ﷺ, whenever some of you or one of you enters the masjid, he must not sit down until he prays 2 rak'ahs. Now, if you look at all the hadiths, you will never ever find the description of Tahiyyatul Masjid. Though we know that the prayer is called Salat Tahiyyatul Masjid. So where did the name come from? The name came from the scholars who looked into the hadiths and wanted to give a description to these prayers. And this description misled some of the Muslims to think that these 2 rak'ahs are a particular set of rak'ahs that are intended for themselves. And this led them to think, then I have to pray another 2 rak'ahs for the sunnah of Fajr, for example, if it's Fajr prayer. And this is wrong. The Prophet said, ﷺ, whenever you enter a masjid, just pray any 2 random rak'ahs. Which means that if I enter a masjid and I make wudu, I come into the masjid, I pray a set of 2 rak'ahs only. This would suffice for Tahiyyatul Masjid. This would suffice for Tahiyyatul Wudu, because I just made wudu. And this would suffice for Sunnat al-Fajr if I intended that this is Sunnat al-Fajr. The rest, I do not need to intend it. It comes by default. So Tahiyyatul Masjid is also accepted if you come and find them praying in congregation. So you join them before you pray your 2 sunnah of Tahiyyatul Masjid. After finishing the congregation, do I have to stand up and pray? Nope. Because you've already prayed with them, the congregation. This is sufficient. You did not sit down before prayer. You've prayed. Now, one would argue and say, okay, if you claim that these 2 rak'ahs are mandatory, then answer this, Sheikh. If I come after Asr prayer to the masjid, should I sit or should I pray and then sit? The answer is you should pray 2 rak'ahs. Got you, Sheikh. A'udhu billah. What's wrong? Said, you said I have to pray. Said, yeah. But the Prophet ﷺ said, it is not permissible to pray after Asr prayer until the sun sets. So I got you. I said, no, you didn't. I said, now you're telling me to defy the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ? Didn't the Prophet say, do not pray after Asr until the sun sets? Yeah, he did. So how are you ordering me to pray 2 rak'ahs of Tahiyat al-Masjid? I said, listen, you don't learn knowledge through picking things here and there. You have to go to the root of the problem. Now, when the Prophet ﷺ prohibited us from praying after Asr, if I didn't pray Fajr out of forgetfulness, and I remembered, okay, Jazakallah khair, if I were in the Masjid after Asr and they brought a deceased person to pray funeral prayer, can I pray funeral prayer? Yes, Sheikh, you can. You have to bury the man. So this is after Asr. Thirdly, if I was in the Masjid, hypothetically, and the sun eclipsed, so can we pray eclipse prayer? Guess so. Yeah, this is mandatory as well. What about if I have to do something immediately and I need to pray 2 rak'at istikhara? Can I do that? I said, yeah, you can do that. So the prohibition of the Prophet ﷺ to pray after Asr is not an open one. Rather, it is specific to things that have no legitimate cause, to voluntary prayers. Someone after Asr is sitting there and says, listen, I have like 20 minutes before Maghrib, let me pray 10 rak'ahs. I said, nope, sit down, haram. You can't do that. But things that have a legitimate reason behind them, you can offer them after Asr. So I hope this clarifies a lot of the ambiguity that many Muslims may suffer from when it comes to these 2 rak'ahs. Finally, number 8, another sunnah is to make dua, supplication. And we have hadiths such as the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, said, every Friday there is an hour that any Muslim who happens to be standing up in prayer at that time and prays to Allah for anything, Allah will certainly grant it to him or her. So there is a specific hour where Allah answers the dua of people who are invoking him. What is this hour? There are so 30, 40 different opinions. I've lost track of them. But the most authentic opinion, or the most likely a time for answering, would be the last hour of a Friday. And most righteous people I know stay in the masjid after Asr prayer until Maghrib prayer. So they recite Surah Al-Kahf, they recite the Quran, they make dhikr, and just before the adhan by 10 minutes, they take their positions, raise their hands, and start to make dua. Make dua, make dua, make dua, until the adhan is given. And there's a hadith that this is the most likely time for the hour of answering. Some scholars say it is when the Imam rises on the pulpit, on the minbar. And some say it is when, some say it is at the end of the sermon. Some say it is during the salat of the Friday, and so many different opinions. But what is needed to be highlighted is that surely this is a time of acceptance during the day, time of Jumu'ah, and that we should all put our lists and start asking them in this world. And you're appointed an appointment, you're given an appointment with dignitaries, with the president, with the king, with someone who is a CEO of many companies who can help you. You would probably write a list, and when you meet him, you say, listen, I am your highness. Simple as that. No one can force him to give you. when you are supplicating to Allah, shouldn't it be much better? Because the king, the president, the CEO gives you something that he does not possess, really. To supplicating to Allah Azza wa Jal, listing our needs and asking Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to answer them, specifically when we know that this is the time for answering, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. So we will pause here. With Eid prayer. Inshallah, and we will take your questions. The questions, because I have questions from before, so I'll read them and see what happens, inshallah. So, first question is from NetCM. What is the ruling when a mother dies and one of the daughters ignored her while still alive and she's afraid to ask for forgiveness? This is very unfortunate. It's sad. It is worse than losing all of your wealth and health. Your mother was a gateway to paradise. After her death, the gate is closed. So if you were disrespectful, undutiful, if you mistreated your mother while she was alive and now she's dead, I feel sad for you. And I praise Allah Azza wa Jal that I'm not in your shoes. Now, is this the end of the world? Should I be depressed and think that I'll go to hell for eternity? The answer is no. You have committed one of the most heinous and serious and gravest sins possible, but the gates of repentance are always open. So you must repent to Allah, express remorse, ask for forgiveness, do many righteous deeds, make dua for your mother on her behalf, offer umrah, offer hajj on her behalf, and always make dua that Allah forgives her. Inshallah, this might compensate for your mistakes and sins. Also, not to forget to be dutiful to her friends and relatives, because this is part of being dutiful to your parents after their death. Sandra says, I'm the only one in my whole family who are Catholics that accepted Islam. To make a long story short, her parents are not accepting her da'wah. So whenever she calls them to Islam, they become angry, and this causes a lot of drift and fights, and maybe would lead to cutting kinship ties. And she's afraid that when they die, they will go straight to hell. What can she do? Well, Sandra, we have what is known as al-masalih wal-mafasid, pros and cons. Whenever the cons far exceed the pros, you have to refrain. So if they are adamant, if they are defiant, if their hearts are locked and sealed, you have nothing more to do but to behave as a real true Muslimah by being dutiful, respectful, obedient, kind, helping, cooperative, as long as it is within the boundaries of Islam. This is the only thing you can do, nothing more. And hoping, while making a lot of dua for them, that by them seeing you deal with them in such an elevated and highly respected way, you hope that this might have a positive impact on them. But other than that, don't give them direct da'wah by saying you have to accept Islam. What you're doing is kufr. You'll end up in hell. They will never accept this. So you need to change your strategy. Start doing something different that might work with them instead of insisting on the old ways. Rudy Bani says, I'd like to know about a person who is fasting Mondays and Thursdays and also the 3 days, white days of the month. Is it allowed for that person to use an inhaler for allergies or asthma? Um, the answer is yes. The inhaler, as scholars say, is something that is inhaled and it goes straight to your lungs. It's not something that goes to your stomach. One might argue and say, yes, Sheikh, but we can find the taste of it. Even though this is, first, taken as a necessity. Two, it's not food that goes into your stomach. Three, the amount of moist is so negligible, if any, that it is much less than what remains in your mouth after swirling water in wudu and spitting out. There is some water mixed with your saliva, but nevertheless, this is so negligible that it is not considered to be drinking, and hence, there's no problem with the inhaler, Rudy. Fatima says, when traveling, if a woman finds no place except a masjid to pray, how should she pray? Should she join the congregation or can she pray alone? This is up to her. Praying in the masjid is not mandatory. So if a woman enters a masjid while they're praying in congregation, she has the option to join them and she has the option to pray on her own and leave. This is totally up to her. Lean says, since it is not obligatory to be in the state of purity during Tawaf and Sa'i, then how are we going to perform prayers when the adhan is called? Simply, you can go and perform wudu. Your question, with all due respect, does not make sense. If I prayed Isha and I'm making Tawaf and Sa'i, but if I prayed Maghrib and I'm making my Tawaf and Sa'i and I'm not in the state of wudu, and the adhan of Isha is called, how can I pray? Go and make wudu. There's nothing contradicting between the issue of making Tawaf and Sa'i without being in the state of wudu and between making wudu for prayer. These are two separate things and Allah knows best. Haslin says, if a doctor does not allow a patient after a spinal surgery to strain herself, can she combine salat in those cases? Combining prayers during traveling is a sunnah. And the Prophet used to do it, alayhi salatu wasalam. But also he used to allow his ummah to combine whenever there is hardship. So if there is a hardship upon an individual, and this hardship is once every blue moon, then you can combine. It's raining heavily, and we are in the masjid praying Maghrib. After the Maghrib is over, we make iqamah and we pray Isha 4 rak'ahs at the time of Maghrib due to heavy rain. A person is going to an exam, and this exam starts after dhuhr time and would end only after sunset. We tell him pray Asr, combine it to dhuhr after you pray dhuhr. 4 rak'ah by 4 rak'ah. No problem. So if this patient is suffering and according to the order of the doctor, she must not move or strain herself, which would happen usually when we tell her go and perform wudu, go attend the call of nature in the bathroom and do this and do that. If this is the case, and then yes, she can combine, and Allah knows best. Rabia says of the devil, mental illnesses can be a combination of both and can be either one. So this requires a psychiatric evaluation to know whether it is fully mental or it has to do with waswas. Likewise with seizures. Some seizures are caused by electric currencies and waves in the brain. This is medical. And some of the seizures are caused by the jinn possession. And this is something that has to go through medical doctors to evaluate, and then through the raqis to do their job. Rayyan says, does witr prayer count as night prayer if someone has intention to pray tahajjud, however had only time to pray witr just before fajr? The answer is yes. Prayers that you offer after Isha and before the adhan of Fajr, they are counted as night prayer. Her second question is it allowed to give sadaqah with the intention of giving on two persons' names? Answer is yes. I have $100. I'd like to give in charity. Boom. I gave it to charity. I get the reward of $100 charity. I intend to give it on behalf of my wife and myself. I give it out. It's 50 for her, 50 for me. I decide to give it on behalf of my family. So it's divided by their numbers, and each one gets what was given out. Not the full 100 on behalf of 10 people, for example. No, it's $10 on behalf of each one of the 10. So this is up to you. Whether more, this is all up to you. Afia says, why is that the riba money is sinful only for the one who earns it, not for the others who use it, while the one who use it knows that the riba money, but if one steals something and gives it to the others while knowing it's got to him by stealing, it's haram for the one who steals it and also to the one who uses it, just for clarification. Now, in the beginning, I was a little bit confused of the question, and I almost said the question is not clear, but then it came to me. What Afia is asking is that whenever we are asked about a man who works in a riba-based bank, he earns haram, so the wife and the children are afraid and scared of his income. We usually say to them, the sin is on the person who earned it, not on you. But when the same question is asked about a person who is a thief and he steals things, we say that it is haram for him and for anyone he gives this wealth or money to. So what's the difference? Okay, the difference is that scholars differentiated between money that is haram because it is itself haram, physically haram, or money that is haram because the way it was earned. So I have a mobile phone. This mobile phone, it's old, it's 40 years old. I'm a poor man. This, I saw it on a cafe's table. I snatched it and ran away. Now I came to you and I said, this is a gift from your friend to you. You cannot accept that because this particular phone itself is haram and it belongs to someone else. So he cannot give it away and we say it's halal to be taken. It is still haram even if he sells it, even the one who bought it, sold it to the second, the third, the fourth, it is still belonging to the lawful owner and it cannot be changed. Unlike if a person deals in riba, the money itself is halal. $10,000 in exchange for $11,000. The money, banknotes, is halal. The way it was earned is haram. And hence, once it changes hands, it remains as a default halal. And I'll give you another example that hopefully would clarify this a little bit further. In the Quran, Allah tells us about the Jews that they consume other people's wealths and they accept riba and they embezzle others. So we know that their income is haram and they are the most famous among the people of the earth to deal in riba, in interest, in usury. Yet we know from the authentic hadith that a Jew woman invited the Prophet ﷺ for a meal and she cooked a sheep, grilled it for him and poisoned it. And she put a lot of the poison in the shoulder part because she knew that the Prophet loved the shoulder most ﷺ. Now the Prophet accepted the invitation, ate from that sheep, spit the morsel because Allah made it speak to him. He didn't ask her whether her income was from riba or from elsewhere, which means that though it's haram for them, once they give it to someone else, it becomes halal for those on the receiving end. So there's a difference between the two types of earning, and Allahu Azza wa Jal knows best. Fida says, is it sunnah to walk barefooted without shoes sometimes? The answer is yes. This is part of the sunnah, and the Prophet instructed that, alayhi salatu wasalam, that either walk with shoes on or with both of them off. Isra says, is a Muslim woman supposed to follow the characteristics and manners of the Prophet ﷺ and be like him, or it's the men who are told to follow? No, this is for all mankind, women and men, in things that are related to both. But in things that are related only to men, then, and there are a handful such as jihad, for example, then this is different. The second question of Isra is, can a female watch men's sports? The answer is no. This is totally inappropriate. In men's sports, usually they are the heaviest, the most masculine. In so many cases, their auras are exposed. And she gives an example of volleyball, tennis. Well, volleyball, they all wear shorts. Their thighs are exposed. Tennis, يعني, sort of. American football, they're wearing tights, and it's a violent sports. And hockey again, they wear shorts. So this is totally inappropriate for a woman to waste her time watching non-mahram men do such things, and shaitan is always waiting for you. Sharmin says, can one keep daughter's name Tuha? I don't know. Tuha is neither Arabic nor Islamic, so I don't usually do names, but any Muslim would not. Says, in my country there are many confusions among Islamic scholars referring to Surah Al-A'raf verse 157, the term ummi. What does the word mean? Ummi means that illiterate. The Prophet ﷺ was illiterate. He could not read or write. And the Arabs in general were illiterate. So he is Rasulul Ummi, Nabiyul Ummiyin. And this is a well-established fact. Mirvat says, is your prayer valid if you forgot to say Rabbi ghfirli between the two sajdas? If you forgot, then you have to compensate this by 2 prostrations of forgetfulness. Because the most authentic opinion is that Rabbi ghfirli between the 2 sajdas is mandatory. Abdul Rahman or Abdul Mu'min says, can I say in a dua after saying Rabbana wa lakal hamd? This is an issue of dispute. Sheikh bin Baz, may Allah have mercy on his soul, say that this is a place of dua. And I believe that it is not a place of dua except in the times of qunut. Rather, it's a place for making a lot of dhikr as prescribed. And if you want to make dua, you make it when you are in the prostration position or before you offer the salam to conclude your prayer. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. And this is all the time we have. Until we meet you next Monday, I leave you. في أمان الله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.